Welcome back to the AI Breakdown Brief, all the AI headline news you need in around 5 minutes. Last night was the State of the Union, and of course, most American political coverage is focused on President Biden coming out swinging and partisan questions and memes and all this sort of stuff. But for us, what we are interested in is a couple of mentions of artificial intelligence during the speech. Now, one of those, predictably probably, had to do with voice impersonation. You'll remember that during the New Hampshire primary a few weeks ago, President Biden was the subject of a voice impersonation scam, where effectively a Democratic political consultant had paid someone to create an AI version of President Biden, and robocalled Democratic primary voters in New Hampshire, telling them to stay home, saying that they didn't need to vote then, and that their vote only really mattered in November. Now, it wasn't too harmful relative to what these messages could do, but it did get everyone on edge. It has really triggered an immune response, if you will, around the potential for this to be a much more destructive type of thing in American politics. So President Biden in the State of the Union called for a ban on AI voice impersonation. The other thing that he said, just in a passing mention, however, was he said he wanted to harness the promise of AI and protect us from its peril. Now, of course, this is a very generic statement. It's very political speak. It's kind of what we've heard from this White House throughout, that there's good and bad, and we got to promote the good and protect from the bad. But still, the fact that it warranted mention in the State of the Union is notable. While we may not be getting comprehensive AI legislation this year because of the political cycle, it doesn't seem like it's completely left the White House's agenda, at least. This is probably a good time for the White House to be discussing artificial intelligence, as it's certainly entering the public consciousness more as well. Each year, communications giant Edelman publishes a trust barometer report. It's effectively a look at how trust in institutions, in different media, and different figures has changed over the last year. And this year, one of the big focuses was artificial intelligence. Said Edelman Global Technology Chair Justin Westcott, "Trust is the currency of the AI era, yet as it stands, our innovation account is dangerously overdrawn. Companies must move beyond the mere mechanics of AI to address its true cost and value, the why and for whom." So what are the numbers here? 5 years ago, globally speaking, 61% of people said that they trusted AI companies. The most recent reading was down to 53%. In the US, it's even a little bit more dramatic. 5 years ago, it was 50% of people who trusted AI companies. That has dropped 15 percentage points down to 35%, just a little over a third. Democrats trust AI companies slightly more at 38%, with independents at 25% and Republicans at 24%. Edelman does note that this might not just be an AI problem. There is a larger pattern of a decline in trust, which is something we've talked about on this show before, but it shows up pretty starkly in these numbers. 8 years ago, technology was the leading industry in trust in 90% of countries that Edelman surveyed. Today, it's the most trusted in only half of those countries, down 40% in that time. There are a million reasons for that, but that would be much more than a single podcast to get into. Interestingly, there seems to be a divide between developing and developed markets, with developing markets wanting AI more. Axios sums up, acceptance outpaces resistance by a wide margin in developing markets such as Saudi Arabia, India, China, Kenya, Nigeria, and Thailand. Meanwhile, respondents in France, Canada, Ireland, the UK, US, Germany, Australia, the Netherlands, and Sweden rejected the increased use of AI by a 3-to-1 margin. There is a lot that we could explore here too. Is this a reflection of the fact that AI seems to be a great equalizer by bringing the bottom up and making what were once premium skills a little less valuable? Could be. One of the things that makes this such an interesting new phenomenon is the fact that the automation is happening at the white-collar level rather than the blue-collar level. That's not something we've seen historically with other technology movements, and it could end up with some pretty weird and novel political resistance because of that. So what to do if you are in the AI industry? Well, once again, the Global Technology Chair, Justin Westcott, says, "Those who prioritize responsible AI, who transparently partner with communities and governments, and who put control back in the hands of users, will not only lead the industry, but will rebuild the bridge of trust that technology has, somewhere along the way, lost." One of the reasons I think that there are such big questions around AI is that there are such wildly different interpretations of it. You might have seen this chart flying around Twitter/X, AIs ranked by IQ. It comes up with an IQ score based on questions right out of a 35-question test. A random guesser down at the bottom gets 5.833 of these questions right for an IQ of 63.5. ChatGPT-4 got 13 of the questions right, giving it an IQ of 85. And Claude 3, the new kid on the block, got 18.5 questions right. To be honest, I'm not sure what the 0.5 of a question right is, but we're going with this chart, for a 101 IQ score. Now, whether this is actually a useful measure, and whether, frankly, this is even just a made-up chart, I'm not totally sure. What's interesting is the virality of it as a reflection of people's concerns about AI. Yet on the other side of this, we still have folks who argue that AI is simply not intelligent, and that we're speaking about it in the wrong terms. Meta's chief AI scientist Jan LeCun wrote recently on Twitter, "You are confusing intelligence and knowledge. LLMs have a lot of accumulated knowledge, but very little intelligence. An elephant or a 4-year-old are way smarter than any LLM." Which of course brings up the question, what does it mean to be smart? And the reality that we don't have necessarily a good or consistent consensus answer to that is probably why there's so much controversy around this smart technology. Heading over into markets for a minute, AI chip companies continue to get a huge boom with Broadcom announcing that they are anticipating $10 billion in AI chip sales in 2024. $7 billion of that is apparently coming from contracts with 2 companies which are unnamed, but widely assumed to be Google and Meta, who Broadcom is helping design custom AI chips. The CEO of Broadcom, Hock Tan, said that the custom chip business, quote, "can command margins similar to our corporate gross margin of around 75%. Now, things could get interesting for Broadcom because last month, Reuters reported that NVIDIA, the big data center AI chip giant, wants to get into this bespoke chip fabrication game as well. On February 9th, Reuters wrote, "NVIDIA is building a new business unit focused on designing bespoke chips for cloud computing firms and others. Its H100 and A100 chips serve as a generalized all-purpose AI processor for many of those major customers, but the tech companies have started to develop their own internal chips for specific needs. Doing so helps reduce energy consumption and potentially can shrink the cost and time to design. NVIDIA is now attempting to play a role in helping these companies develop custom AI chips that have flowed to rival firms such as Broadcom and Marvell Technology. This is seen as a $30 billion opportunity." So if you're trying to sum up, even as trust in AI companies might be declining, the energy and capital going into those companies is doing nothing but accelerating. That is going to do it for today's AI Breakdown Brief. Next up, the main AI Breakdown.